This is the worst championship we have had maybe in the history of the championship, and that might sound like a crazy statement, but this needs to be explained in the video. If you are a championship fan, then do hit subscribe on this channel because we do upload daily championship content. So if you support any team in the championship, this is the place to be. Do hit that subscribe button and do drop a like as well if you do go in to enjoy the video, and let's jump straight into it. As I say, that might sound like an absolutely crazy statement, but I want to take you back to last season where, of course, it was a really entertaining championship season, like every single championship season is. We know the main thing with the championship is that it's the most competitive league, it's the most unpredictable league, and it's the most exciting league in general. Everybody loves the championship. I'm not saying that the excitement is any lower this season than any other season. I think actually this season, this might be the most exciting championship season we have ever had in history, which again might sound like a crazy statement, but then when you look at it, as I explain it later on, the championship has huge potential this season. But I just want to take you back to specifically last season. We'll look back at some other previous seasons as well. But as you can see here, you go to the top of the championship table, where last season you had two teams that got 100 points in the championship. You had Leeds United with 100 points, who absolutely stormed the division, were the best team in my opinion in the whole league. Burnley were very good, of course, defensively. We've not seen a better team in the championship defensively ever in history than Burnley. Just 16 goals conceded, which is just an unbelievable. I don't think anyone speaks about it anywhere near enough. To concede 16 goals in a season is absolutely crazy. But I still do think in terms of going forward, in terms of excitement to watch and who was actually the best team in my opinion, Leeds United were just unbelievable last season. I mean, they conceded 30 goals and they had Meslier in goal for the vast majority of the season. If they didn't have him in goal, you could honestly take a fair few goals off Leeds United. Then you're looking at maybe in the 20s, maybe in like the low 20s for Leeds United if they actually had a decent goalkeeper, which is very competitive to Burnley's overall total in terms of goals conceded. But Leeds obviously scoring 95 goals. And then even last season with Sheffield United as well, I think you had three obviously clear standout teams in terms of over the 46 game season. Sheffield United were keeping the pace with Burnley and Leeds for the vast majority. Of course, they fell away at the end of the season. I mean, in terms of their goals and their goal difference, it wasn't quite anywhere near as good as Leeds and Burnley. I think there was obviously a big gap between Leeds and Burnley clearly being the best teams. Sheffield United were in their own kind of little section there. You can see on 90 points where they were, you'd also say for the most part of the season, too good in terms of getting 90 points. That is a good enough total for Sheffield United getting 90 points or 92 points without the deduction. That's a total that will literally get you promoted in the vast majority of the championship seasons. And say Sheffield United this season, obviously that's not going to happen anymore, but say Sheffield United did replicate what they did last season in terms of getting 90 points, that would 100% be enough this season, the way things are looking right now in the championship. Be very confident in 90 points getting you inside of the top two. And then of course you look at the rest of the division, where it's all kind of, I've said this a lot, I mean, I think between all the rest of the teams in the division, there's not a massive amount of difference between, obviously there's teams that are better than other teams, yes, but in terms of, like, from the bottom of the league to all this section here, I don't think there's a huge difference. And you see it towards the end of the season, you always see it at the end of the season, the relegation teams at the bottom of the championship, always pick up points at a good rate, and we saw it in the last few seasons now where teams have got relegated on a very high points total. Luton getting relegated with 49 points in the championship last season. The season before that, it was Birmingham who got relegated on 50 points. And it does just show how this bottom section, especially like you look at the bottom half, Wednesday to Luton, it's only 9 points separating them. It just shows how competitive the championship is between all of these teams. Which, as I say, you look at this here, and then you go Bristol City getting 68 points. It's a very low points total in terms of Coventry getting 69. Normally, you need to get at least maybe getting 70 points to get into the playoffs. And it just shows how close in ability all of these teams were last season over the 46 game season. Because, as I say, there really wasn't a lot of points between them. Obviously, we know in the championship anyone can beat anyone. Anyone does beat anyone in the championship, as proven by the championship last season. And then you're going into it this season now. As I say, you had standout teams last season that blew the league away in the likes of Leeds and Burnley. Even Sheffield United, to an extent as well, were very impressive for the vast majority of the season. And then you take it back to this season, where, of course, you always expect the teams that get relegated from the Premier League to be right at the top of the championship, because obviously they've got the parachute payments, they've obviously got the financial positives that you get from being in the Premier League as well. Obviously, you get all of that, and you just put all that together with the squad they'd already have from being in the Premier League. You expect the teams that were right up there, the parachute teams, to be up there again in the championship, which so far this season, it hasn't really been true in the slides, because you look at the teams that have got parachute payments in the top six. The only team in the top six right now with parachute payments is Leicester City, who might end up getting a points deduction. So as I'm saying here, the gap, these parachute teams so far haven't performed so far in the Championship. Obviously, things can change. With 6 games in, you don't want to jump the gun too early. But you look at the likes of Southampton; they were second favourites to get promoted at the start of the season. Probably still up there in terms of favourites, but in terms of their performances so far, they actually played really well last night against Liverpool. Watching them, that was their best performance of the season, funnily enough. But they've performed really poorly so far this season. They've been dropping points left, right and centre. Just one win all season. It was 2 goals in the 90th minute that ended up getting them their one win of the season. And then you got Ipswich, who of course were heavy favourites. Everyone were expecting, and they still might, don't get me wrong, everyone was expecting Ipswich to be steamrolling this league, walking over everybody, and literally doing what Burnley and Leeds did last season in terms of getting 100 points and walking the division. Of course, it can take a little bit of time and things will come together for Ipswich. But they arguably should have really had a loss, and they would have had a loss in that game against Blackburn if it wasn't for the waterlogged pitch in the end, which is crazy. But yeah, then you're looking at Ipswich; they would be on after 6 games, 6 points as well as Southampton. Those are the 2 favourites that are absolutely they're really struggling performance-wise so far this season. Which quite simply last season you didn't really have when you had the likes of Leeds and Burnley, who were pretty decent from right at the start of the season. They were always up there from the word go pretty much. And then you look at it now and you think the quality of these teams at the top. I think don't get me wrong, there's some very good teams in the Championship. Middlesbrough have been really impressive so far. Stoke have been really impressive. But that these teams are still, in my opinion, teams will fancy their chances against these teams. As I say, I don't think there's a team. If Ipswich and Southampton aren't going to perform to the level which they haven't done so far, there's not going to be a team that's going to be like a Burnley and like a Leeds last season and go on and get 100 points. I just don't see it happening with any of these current top teams in the Championship, especially with Leicester if they end up getting the points deduction. And then you're looking at it saying it's the worst quality Championship in terms of the top end teams, but I think the quality of the Championship in terms of there's a lot of good teams in the Championship, a lot of decent teams, where, as I was speaking about before, in the table last season, where I just don't think there's a massive amount of ability and a massive amount of difference between the rest of these sides in the division, where I think anyone can beat anyone. And then you're looking at it probably from a Middlesbrough perspective, obviously start the season fantastically, even a Stoke, Bristol City, any of these teams that are in the top half right now, literally, you think there's an opportunity here for us to actually do something really, really special. If these teams aren't going to perform, they're not going to pick up the pace, which obviously it's very early days still, but if they aren't going to pick up the pace, you think there's an outside chance here for another team where we didn't expect to really be up there at the start of the season. A lot of people wrote off Bristol City, even if they got playoffs last season, with obviously the manager change and obviously things happening at Bristol City. People didn't really back them, thought they'd drop off. Stoke, people didn't really have up there. And now these teams all of a sudden have got off to this incredible start in the Championship, and think, you never know, because all these teams here, there's a massive amount of ability between them all, and you think, if we can put some performances together and get a run going, we can absolutely be up there come the end of the season. And will a team go on to get 100 points this season or anything like that? I'm not sure if it'll be that high again. And then you think there's a great opportunity, and that's just talking about automatic promotion. The fact that these teams are in conversation right now is crazy. Of course, I say you got to stress and make the point that it is only 6 matches into the season. Then of course you've got the playoff positions as well, where you think teams can sneak in and we could get some real surprise packages in the Championship in the playoffs this season. You look at the likes of the teams that have started well. As I say, Borough, people didn't expect them to be as good as what they have been, given the situation that they were going into the new season, and they had a lot of question marks over them. They've definitely answered that so far. Stoke City, the same. Bristol City, Preston, and the only 2 teams you say in that top 6 that you expect to be in there is Coventry City, who've been very decent so far this season. Of course, 3 draws in a row now, but before that were very good and a very entertaining team to watch that can score goals against any team in the division. And Leicester City there as well, who, as I say, if they get the points deduction, you got a top 6, which is such an interesting top 6 after the opening 6 games in the Championship, and it does just prove how competitive this league really is going to be this season. I don't think there's going to be a team that's going to run away with it as much as it has been in previous seasons. And then you go down to the bottom, you're going to have such a competitive league down there as well. So when I say it's the worst Championship, I think it's actually going to be one of the most entertaining Championship seasons we've ever had, because we're going to have multiple teams going for playoffs. We're going to have teams, maybe even hopefully like a proper automatic promotion race with multiple teams involved where they're all close together and there's no real standout. It will be amazing to witness that, because of course, as I say, in previous seasons we've had sides just run away with it and win games every single week, and you might not get that this season. And then you've always got a fantastic relegation battle where these teams that are up there right now, I mean, as a QPR fan, we could lose a couple of games in a row and then we're looking back over our shoulders again. That's just the way that the Championship is. It's such things can change so quickly in the Championship. You lose a couple of games in a row, you're looking down towards relegation, thinking if we carry on this form, we're looking over our shoulders. Some other teams are doing okay down there, and they're not bad teams. But then a couple of wins in a row, as a QB, I've literally witnessed this. We've gone from, I was thinking, it's going to be relegation battle season, like what are we even doing, to 3 wins in a row, and then you're thinking, is there really a team is there really a lot of standout teams in the division which are so far clear of everybody else right now? Based off the opening 6 games, not exactly. There's not been a team that's really absolutely convinced that they're going to go on and absolutely smash the division and they're going to go and definitely get automatic promotion. There's no team that's convinced me of that so far. And as I say, the longer it goes on for teams like Southampton and Ipswich, if they're not going to perform, of course, Ipswich had that 5-0 win against Sheffield United and got lucky in that game against Blackburn. But, if they're going to continue to drop points for the next few games, you can genuinely start to consider this and think it's going to be an unbelievable watch for this season in the Championship. And I think it's going to be one of the best Championship seasons we've ever seen. Also, as well, there is news as well of potentially this thing actually happening with 8 teams or 6 teams in the playoffs, and you've got a chance of getting the playoffs when you get to 8th. I look at this table here and I look at the previous seasons. I think why change anything? What is the issue with the current situation where we've got 4 teams getting into the playoffs and it's the top 6? I think it's justified because they talk about dead rubber games. There's not many dead rubber games in the Championship as it is. Go back to last season, go back to the season before. There's battles for the playoffs on every single season, regardless of it being 8th. It just sounds crazy if they bring in 8th because there'll be teams that down in 10th, 11th, 12th with going into the final game of the season with an opportunity to get into the playoffs. I mean, people obviously, it's great for competitiveness and it's great to have maybe some surprise teams getting into the Championship and stuff like that. But I think 8th is just stretching it a little bit too far in my opinion. You look at the Championship season already, how competitive it is and why it's the best division in the league. It absolutely just doesn't need to be adjusted or doesn't need to be changed in the slightest. It just needs to stay how it is. We get a relegation battle every season. We always get a battle for the playoffs every season. And this season we might get a fantastic automatic promotion race, which is going to be an unbelievable watch if things do pan out the way that they potentially could do and the way things are looking as things stand right now. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you're a Championship fan, do hit subscribe on this channel. We do daily Championship content. We talk about your teams every single day. So if you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe button, it'll be very greatly appreciated. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.